Daina Reid's CV reads like a highlight reel of every top-rating Aussie TV series of the last 25 years. From The Secret Life of Us to Offspring, The InXS Story to Paper Giants, The Birth of Cleo. If it was iconic viewing in the noughties, there's a pretty good chance that Daina was behind the camera. But it's her more recent work that's taken her global. She's directed more episodes of The Handmaid's Tale than you can poke a red smock at. She's wrangled performances out of the likes of Steve Carell and John Malkovich, and counts Oscar-winning director Jane Campion among her admirers. And as The Handmaid's Tale reaches its dramatic series conclusion, it felt like the right time to sit down with Daina and pick her enormous entertainment brain. We talk about how a girl from Perth, who started out doing sketch comedy with the likes of Kitty Flanagan, Magda Szubanski and Gina Riley, found herself on the speed dial of some of Hollywood's biggest producers. There are a few name drops, as you'd expect, but we also get into the meaty stuff. How streaming is shaping the industry, what it means for Australian stories, and how she's navigated it all as a woman behind the camera. Daina Reid, welcome to The Call Sheet.
Nice to meet you. Nice to be here, Bryce.
Let's begin where all good conversations should, and tell us I want to know the Daina Reid origin story, where you grew up, who reared you, and then how you found yourself gravitating to a career in the entertainment industry.
Well, I'm from Perth, Western Australia, and my parents are Joy and Bob Reid.
Shout out to Joy and Bob Reid.
Joy and Bob Reid. And I guess, I started doing dance classes like so many kids in the suburbs, and but then that kind of got me into performing. And what it did do, I started performing on a Perth television show, because back then the different states made some content themselves, and then it got
Is this like the Perth version of Young Talent Time?
Yeah, very much
lovely.
so. And so I was in a studio every weekend. So I would go up and be in the Channel 7 studios in Perth. And so I got really interested in the machinations of the television studio.
Yeah.
I did film and television at Curtin University in Western Australia, which was called WAIT back then, the West Australian Institute of Technology. So I did film and telly there. And I always talk about it was divided into two kind of sections. There was the film stream and the video stream. And the film kids, I did video. I did video because I could see that I could do more of it because it wasn't as expensive.
Okay.
So I would get to practice, but the film kids were really snobby and thought they were better.
Who's laughing now?
Who's laughing now? And also, it's all on the same stuff now, guys. But they kind of said to you, if you want to be a director, you need to know how to talk to actors. So at Curtin, there was a theatre, or there is a theatre called the Hayman Theatre. And so I went off and started doing like a minor in theatre arts. And I kind of ended up on that journey then, because all of my colleagues who I'm still friends with to this day, like that's where you really met the tribe, they all started auditioning for all the big schools here in Australia, like the VCA and NIDA and WAPA.
Yeah.
So I went off and did that too. So my parents were appalled when I got into WAPA, because they were like, oh my God, we were appalled enough, because they're not in the business at all. My dad's an electrician. My mum worked in what they call a settlement agency, which is kind of a real estate thing.
Yeah.
So they were appalled when I did film and television anyway. And then I got a job, so fine. And then they go, oh no, I'm going to go off and be an actor. They were like, no. And so my mum talked me out of it, and I remember I rang WAPA and said, no, I won't come. And I was really disgruntled and not happy about it. I was just feeling weird about it. And I walked up to my sister, and she turned to me and she said, oh, what do you want to do? I said, I think I want to be an actor. She goes, well, ring him back.
And you obviously did, because not long thereafter, Australia met you when you became a cast member on Full Frontal.
That's right.
The seminal 1990s comedy sketch show. What was that experience like?
Oh, it was, look, at the time, I think it was actually quite grueling and quite hard.
Yeah.
Of course, now in hindsight, I cannot even believe I got to have that amazing experience with those amazing people, practicing that all day, every day, so hard.
Yeah.
Such incredible characters, people from Ted Emery, our director, working with Sean McAuliffe and Kitty Flanagan and Eric Banner, Glenn Butcher, and all of them. They were all absolutely incredible. But I just had just an amazing time, an amazing adventure, really grueling. Like, we all, for a woman in comedy at the time, and it was hard because, you got told to your face by your male colleagues who liked you that chicks weren't funny, like all the time. We could not get sketches up to save our lives because they would say, this show's made for, 14-year-old boys and we're not going to change it. And so you couldn't find a voice. So as much as I had one of the most incredible times doing that, it also knocked the creativity kind of sideways. And I'm sure I'm not alone in that. It's a lot to overcome. But now, I still very much identify with that time of my life and what I found in that time of my life, I still really exercise to this day.
Yeah. Do you think that attitude has changed? If you look at the success someone like your colleague at the time, Kitty Flanagan, has gone on to have. Has that changed? She must have,
I haven't.
Triumph,
like such
over
a triumph.
adversity.
Like so, yeah, exactly. Like, we've stayed sporadically in touch, but we've never got into that we've never got into a conversation where you can really talk about that. But I'd love to. I'd love to know, because it is, I mean, at the time, even then when those people were saying that to my face and to obviously other people, Kitty's included, I'm sure, Magda, Gina and Jane were at the height of their powers.
Magda, Gina and Jane.
Yeah, so it's not just in the comedy world, it's an attitude that's everywhere. And it's it takes a lot to overcome it because the evidence is right there and it doesn't change that attitude. The evidence was Magda, Gina and Jane being so massively, incredibly, wildly popular and brilliant.
Yeah.
And I got to be on Kath and Kim. That's one of my favourite experiences of all time.
Well, Magda Zubanski and Jane Turner, Gina Riley, as you say, went on to create Kath and Kim.
Yeah.
Which arguably is still one of the biggest comedies this country's ever produced.
Yeah. Again, it's one of my great badges of honour that I got to play netball with Magda.
So you were on
and
the
Jane.
team. Oh,
I was on the team.
Players.
I was the adversary to Kim because myself and my character was Kylie Bolton and I had a twin called Danny Bolton who was played by the wonderful Kate Gorman.
Yes.
And we'd rooted Kim's husband,
Brett Dean Craig.
Yeah, Brett Dean Craig, played by the wonderful Pete Rosethorn.
Amazing.
Yeah, so anyway, that was one of my great experiences.
And yet, once the full frontal experience, and that was over several years, wasn't it? There was
there was a few years in the 90s.
Yeah. But as I understand it, once that filming had wrapped on that series, you went and knocked on the door of Blue Heelers.
I did.
And said to them, I want to learn to become a director.
Yeah, I think I've been thinking it for a while and I went, I'm not going to reinvent myself in this world. It's time to get back on track. And I'd been talking to those people at Blue Heelers because we all shared a loading dock. So, when I had a dressing room at Channel 7 and next door they used to do the edit and I could hear them all the time doing the edit. So I just walked in one day, that poor director, because it was their screening, like the actual fancy pants producer screening. I just walk in and I go, I'd really like to do a director's attachment. Can I? And they went, come in Monday. So I did.
Brilliant.
And that was kind of where it all started. It's where I learnt so much. It's a tricky thing because, Channel 7 now has a track record for women's stuff and all that sort of thing has not been great. But when I was there, they championed me. And I said this in a speech once, you kind of felt the room get a bit cold, but I went, I can't deny the fact that Channel 7 were really supportive of me at that time of my career.
Yeah. But since, I guess, then, if you look at your CV, it reads like a roll call of every seminal Aussie TV show and miniseries from the 90s. All Saints.
Oh, yes.
Secret Life of Us. Paper Giants. How's That? The In Excess Story. And then, of course, Offspring. It's like the Daina Reid sprinkle has been involved in all of these very important moments in Australian
I think
TV
that,
history.
and I guess it was happening then. It was an incredible time. It's just pre-streaming. It's that right up to pre-streaming. It's kind of those final big days of event television on free to air. So I feel that the timing was really fortunate. Those stories were very, very inherently Australian. I think now, everyone wants their stories to hit overseas and to get the budgets that you need to make. I'm doing the premium television. You need those budgets, and sometimes there's not that room to sell those particularly Australian tales overseas because the Australian viewers want to see them. But at the same time, the streamers go, but who's going to watch it in America? Who's going to watch it in England? Who's going to watch it? So it was amazing that I got to, I don't know, they would make those now.
And I mean, Offspring was such a cultural moment too. I mean, being involved in that.
It's really interesting that people go, we can't understand. Often the reasoning, when you read the reason why something hasn't sold overseas, it's because they can't understand the accent. I've got to tell you, my kids watch everything with closed captions now. It drives me crazy.
Yes.
But I'm sitting on the recce bus in Canada and when we're shooting Handmaid's Tale or something and people go, I'm watching Offspring. And I went, great, because now Offspring's reached the world because of streaming.
Yeah.
And people find it, and there's 7 seasons of it.
And, of course, you had the opportunity then to work with the amazing Asha Keddy, although I understand it, you discovered Asha pre-Offspring.
Yes.
You may be responsible for that.
I'm going to make that call.
Good for you. Own it.
I'm sure she kind of discovered herself. But I saw Asha. I went to see my friend, Sherry Lipkowski, was in a play called Sick Room at we were at the Malthouse or the Melbourne Theatre Company. My memory fails me. But and there's I'm not going to say young kid, but a young adult. I think Asha was 18.
Wow.
19. And I'm like, who is that? She played the sick young person and she was astonishing. And so I remember filing that away. And then I was doing MDA, Medical Defence Australia. Funny old show that wouldn't get made today. Great show. It was an excellent show and I loved it and I loved all the people in it. It was brilliant. But yeah, it's kind of, again, very niche. No one would do it now, which is why it was so great that back then things like that did get made. And she played a fantastic guest role in that. She was astonishing. And so then I wheeled her out, again, grabbed her for a perfectly amazing role in Secret Life of Us. And then she was off. So I'm going to call it.
You should.
She can ring up and go, that's not the case. I did something else.
Secret Life of Us, another really important part of certainly
that was
cultural moment.
Quite formative.
How so?
It was kind of a leap from into a different kind of script world, I think. That sort of, and what they were really going for. I mean, everybody's going for their best all the time. But yeah, so it was just working with those scripts, that caliber actors, that subject matter. It was a funny thing that I got treated more seriously because it was shot on film.
Okay.
Which is hilarious, again, because it's all shot on the same stuff now and it's kind of that weird snobby thing, you've worked on film, you must be a better director. Hilarious. It doesn't change my process at all. My process was exactly the same, except I said check the gate at the end of it. That's where it ended. That's the only difference. But there was this kind of thing that, you've worked on film, so you must be serious director.
Yeah, that's right.
And then, kind of we went on from there.
From that roll call of amazing Australian programs and you've added since then some of the biggest international shows to ever hit the small screen. If you look at The Spanish Princess, which was remarkable, Space Force.
Oh, that was fun.
Yeah, with Steve Carell. I mean, and John Malkovich.
And my friend John Malkovich.
John Malkovich, amazing.
I know.
Young Rock, which you've already mentioned, which is amazing.
Very,
and then, of
very
course, The Handmaid's Tale. How did that international transfer happen for you?
I'm going to tell this story because I've asked permission to do it now.
Sure.
Because I never did before because it involves quite a famous person. But it was interesting. When I did a miniseries called The Secret River.
Yeah.
And anyway, it was done. We went to air. I was very, very proud of that. It was very, very hard.
It was beautiful.
It was, almost killed me.
I'm sure.
And several other people, I'm sure, not just me. But my phone rang once when it wasn't working, and usually, especially now, I never do it. It was a number I didn't know, and I usually would not pick that up. But I did this day, and I had my telemarketing defense voice on,
yes.
like, hello. And this woman's voice said, oh, is that Daina? And I'm like, yes. And she said, oh, it's Jane Campion here.
No. The Oscar-winning director of The Piano.
And I went, really? And she started laughing. Anyway, she just watched The Secret River.
Wow.
And she just rang me to say that she really liked it, which was amazing. It was totally amazing and quite life-changing for me. Like it was incredible. So I spoke to Jane Campion for about an hour.
Wow.
And just chatting away, and it was absolutely excellent. Anyway, time goes on, and The Handmaid's Tale has been very successful in its first season. So successful that they have a hiatus in the middle of it, and they have to put off the second season shooting because of all the awards that they're up for.
Wow.
And so they lost a director. And so because Elizabeth Moss had worked with Jane Campion on Top of the Lake, Elizabeth Moss called Jane Campion and said, is there anyone that you can recommend to fill this spot? And Jane Campion said me.
Amazing.
So that's how I got that job.
Elizabeth Moss, of course, being the lead actress in The Handmaid's Tale. What was that like, going across and working on a program that had been so successful internationally? I was
crapping myself. I was serious. You kind of go, you have this thing when you're young, like when you're a kid, you go, when I'm grown up and older, I won't be scared anymore. I won't be nervous anymore. It'll all be good. And I'm here to tell you, that first day when it's about to start and I look over and the car rolls up and Elizabeth Moss gets out of the car in her red dress, I almost wanted to collapse into the freezing cold snow. It was very, very nerve-wracking. But I guess, you just take one step at a time, because this job is the process. This job is this bit. I mean, like most jobs are. One step at a time, and you break it down into scenes and you break it down into moments and you start. So we just kind of got through it.
I guess since The Handmaid's Tale, you've done quite a few projects with Elizabeth Moss. Shining Girls, The Veil. What is it with you two? What's going on there? Codependency?
Well, I think it's about the director-actor relationship. It's about that of being. It's on the floor is where Elizabeth Moss and I really, really connect. Is on that floor, and finding what an actor really needs and connecting in with character and the script, and then so making sure that your direction has resonance for that person. And I think having an acting background has definitely. I think, actors make the best directors. There, I said it. Because that's all you have. Like, there's other departments for all the other things, but when it comes to the actors, there's the director. That's it. It seems crazy.
It does.
That you would not be able to speak to an actor in a way that they can understand.
When you talk about, The Handmaid's Tale, and I'm watching it and I'm just struck. It can't be all that light when you're working on a set like that, with a storyline like that.
It's interesting. I found doing Run Rabbit Run harder tonally.
And this is the film you did with Sarah Snook.
Yes. I mean, granted, it was about
a psychological thriller.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember having this thought going, this is why I was a comedy actor. This is why, because I don't like being here in this place. It was a very dark place.
Mm.
And I think because the darkness of Handmaid's Tale is outside, it's happening to the characters.
Yeah. So
the characters are full of rebellion and full of fight and full of, it's not as dark. It's not as dark for me personally going into it because we're fighting.
Obviously, Sarah Snook too. I mean, Australian audiences will have seen her in multiple things, but internationally, Succession has just made her. And Picture of Dorian Gray on Broadway at the moment. I mean, what's she like to work with?
Oh, she's a complete delight. Very funny. Just unbelievably talented and it's full of energy like I've never seen in my life. We did a scene, which isn't in the film, but where Sarah's character, Sarah, has to do this big swim. And, the weather was crazy and it was, quite grueling again, all that sort of stuff. And, we're kind of working out, all the logistics of it. And I look over to my right and I just see Sarah doing what kids do when they run down to the waves and run away from the waves and run down to the waves and run away from the waves, just on her own. Like just like going and just kind of she was in this moment and that was kind of one of the most delightful things about it, especially with such dark subject matter, that you've got this person who actually is so full of, well, that's how I took it, so full of light and joy and boundless energy. Yeah.
Talk now a little bit, if we can, about the industry and particularly the rise of streaming. You've worked with Hulu, Netflix, Apple TV, Prime. How would you say the arrival of streaming has changed the industry? From an Australian industry point of view, like there's the big US streamers more work for the creatives in Australia? Or?
I think it's all still settling. I think it's all still being worked out. I think there's probably no absolute right now. I remember when doing Shining Girls, I could feel the budget had shrunk. I think for a while when it started, there was a lot of money. I remember people saying, this is where you can do art house. It's not the movies anymore, it's on TV. Yeah. I think that's changed. I think that was there for a minute and I think that's really, really shrunk. And, they're trying to get – it feels – a lot of these feel like doing an Australian show on less budgets than – what we had, not Handmaids. Oh my God, no! I got really spoiled by Handmaids, and changing that headspace to one that has access to lots of resources. But
because I've heard you talk about when you did all those amazing Australian series, the making of Cleo, how's that? I mean, and you're renowned for being able to create something big on a shoestring budget, but then you went to Handmaids, and was that almost overwhelming to suddenly have everything at your disposal?
It is a different headspace. So I remember there's an amazing gentleman called Warren Littlefield who is one of the executive producers of The Handmaid's Tale and has an incredible career in television over in the US. I think he actually played himself in the Larry Sanders Show at some point. He was the head of NBC back then. He's an amazingly clever, wonderful person. And he was on the recce bus with me on the location surveys, and he just kind of stood beside me and he went, "You need a drone for this." And what he was doing was it was smart because he knew that I came from a smaller problem-solving budget conscience.
Make do with less.
Yeah, I make do with less. And he was basically going, "You can have more here. So start to think about more." And so you have to open your mind up to more. And I had to do that on The Handmaid's Tale and learn that skill to ask for bigger things and and go for it. By the time I kind of into maybe the second or third year, I could feel that, not in Handmaid's Tale, on different projects, I could feel that that expansion was shrinking again.
Okay.
But that is definitely popping up now and again, is that the budget constraints are hitting everybody.
Yeah. And then obviously the chill wind was sent through the Australian production community, the industry generally, with President Trump announcing tariffs on productions that are made overseas. That's going to have a massive impact if it comes to pass.
Well, I think, everybody will be having lots of meetings now, and so I'm not sure how that will affect things and what the reality of all of that will be, especially once Hollywood gets involved and kind of says, well, actually, I know you want to help. I know you want to help, Mr. President, but it would be better if you did this, perhaps.
Yeah. So there's more to come.
Yes,
clearly,
more to come
in that space. In one interview I read with you, you were talking about streaming platforms. If we'd learned anything, is that riskier projects will find an audience. And you cited shows like White Lotus, The Bear, Beef, Baby Reindeer as projects that perhaps if you'd looked at on paper, you would have gone, well, who's going to watch that? But then went on to become massive hits. Yeah,
it's really interesting, and this is something I do have a lot of conversations with my colleagues about, because I personally want to take risks. I personally want to, I think most of us are in this to change the world. We want to do that stuff, and we want to resonate what's happening in society, and we want to throw it out there, and we don't necessarily just want to make content. That word again. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with you and I were talking before about Blue Healers. The procedural coming back is a great thing, but I think we need risk plus that. And at the moment, I think people are so worried about money always, and it's always the way. Taking a risk is, you can lose your money. That's it. What if it isn't Baby Reindeer? What if it isn't The White Lotus? What if no one watches it? Where does all that money go? So people kind of go, well, if we hedge our bets, we'll end up with something in the middle, and maybe we'll do all right. And you end up with not a lot of risk taking going on. And you're going to get flogged and work hard doing it anyway in this business. You're going to give your heart and soul to something. I know personally, I want to give my heart and soul to something I truly believe in, I think is going to move and shake or resonate or touch someone in the heart in a way that isn't every day. That's what I want to do. But it's about getting the people who are making these decisions to allow all the practitioners to make this stuff to get to agree with that, to align with that idea of going, I want to take a risk too, as opposed to, I want to keep my job.
Yeah. You talk about wanting to make that television that moves people. When you're on set and you're in the midst of it, do you know that this is one of those moments? Do you have a sense, or do you just never know until it's out there?
You never really know until you put all the steps together. All you can do is go, it's all putting the building blocks and the pixels together. It's all those beats and moments of the script and making them all land.
Yeah.
Because that's your best chance to make them all land, and then at the end of it, you've got this great whole of all these tiny perfect parts. So that's what you're going for. So I'm, a real. I don't know if it was an insult or not, where I was told I was a stickler for detail, and you go, well, yeah, because at the end of the day, you can't gloss over anything.
Yeah,
because humans can feel it. Like they're watching and they perceive it and they know it hasn't hit them in the heart. So you have to get all those details correct, and then hopefully you've got that hit.
How difficult is it to get investors, producers, government-funded agencies like Screen Australia, for example, to take punts on new and untested ideas, the sorts of ones that you think are risky and might have cut through?
Look, they're up for it. I feel that they're up for it. What we've got to do, though, is get the people, as I keep saying, the gatekeepers, whoever's, Netflix or, Stan's great for Australia. Like Amanda Duthie is a real, she is that person, but, it's all about getting the international money so you can have that. It's about getting the other people to take the risk with you. I think, Screen Australia, all those sort of people, they're ready to go, but it's all about whatever platform you're going to show it on. they've got to be on board too. They've got to go, you know what? We're going to go for it.
So many ducks that have to be.
That's right. So we all do want to take risks, but you need those. You need to hold hands with the platform, and they're going to want to take the risk with you.
You've obviously worked overseas, and worked, the epicenter of big TV. What do you think it is that overseas audiences want to see from an Australian production, if anything at all?
Look, I think, we do run around and chase our tails and try and guess what that is. It's interesting. We were talking before about, me being on the recce bus in Canada and people talking to me about Offspring and discovering it after so long, and that they love that. We weren't trying to get an international. I mean, maybe John and Imogen were. Maybe I don't know, and Michael, but that's us just telling the story of a family in Fitzroy. So, and that's resonated. Mr. In Between has resonated. So I think we just have to keep doing what we're doing and being inherently Australian. I always say, let's get out in the landscape. Let's get out in the landscape because that's the point of difference. I know I want to see that when I'm watching Nordic noir. I want to pretend I'm in Scandinavia for the night. And I think that's really important for us to have. And that's happening. I know Western Australia is shooting more than they ever have over there, and we're getting to see that landscape. And even doing Run Rabbit Run, getting out and shooting in the landscape. I think that's a really important thing to do. Truth is what people want from Australians, and kangaroos.
Always kangaroos. Or cattle dogs, because if you look at the success that Bluey has had,
I know,
and it's unapologetically not just Australian, but unapologetically Brisbane and suburbs of Brisbane.
Again, I think we try and guess what it is, and just got to go for it. Yeah, you just kind of got to go for it.
Because you mentioned before, there was a time where a show with an Australian accent would never be countenance being watched overseas. But, we now have children in the United States saying dunny and wheelie bin and stuff, thanks to Bluey. Is this a step change for us, do you think?
Bluey has changed the world. Yeah, it's huge. Yeah, so in a sense, it's when I hark back to that Sunshine, having trouble selling internationally because no one could understand the accents, that's an old-fashioned attitude of some white bloke over there too saying that. Do you know what I mean? It's the attitudes have to change everywhere.
Yeah.
Because that's not a truth. That's just that's an old-fashioned person saying something.
Yes.
Because look at Bluey. So many Americans would have said, no, we're not buying Australian because of the Australian accent. Well, that's not true.
Final question, and I reckon a person's favourite films, there's a lot about them. And,
I knew you were going to ask this. I was thinking about it before I hear it. I'm just going to be ready for this one, just in case.
Well, I'm going to help you because you recently told Peter Hellier in his podcast, You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet, that your favourite films are Point Break, awesome, Die Hard,
yes,
extra awesome, and the 1999 sci-fi spoof Galaxy Quest. If that is still true, what will those three films say about you?
I'm a massive Star Trek fan, and having a comedy background, Galaxy Quest speaks to me massive, and it's got so much heart in it, that film. And Point Break, of course, Catherine Bigelow is a very big influence in my life.
Incredible director.
Incredible director. And kind of, to me, if you look at Point Break, that's the most incredible achievement. I think that's the most. I kind of think about this, which is really nerdy.
Yeah.
I was imagining this morning. God knows why I was thinking about Point Break this morning. Keanu's line and Patrick Swayze's line. So Keanu goes, I am an FBI agent. And Patrick Swayze goes, I know, ain't it wild? Or something like that. I think I paraphrased him.
Yeah.
And I'm like, imagine what that was like written down. It says, I'm an FBI agent. I know, ain't it wild? And you go, but we have these really interesting interpretations of those lines. And you go, okay, so who's that? Is that Keanu? Is that Patrick? Is that Catherine? But one of the other films that I probably would add to my favourites now is The Substance. I almost lost my mind watching that. I had the best time I mean, I'm screaming at the telly because I missed it at the cinema. I was working, and it's very difficult. But I was screaming. Kind of, it's good that I was at my house because I would have been making too much noise. But it was incredible and brave, delightful, delicious things all brought together in this incredible tale of very accurate kind of internalized misogyny that I always talk about that in at dinner parties and bore everyone. No, but I talk about internalized misogyny as something that's very, very unresolved.
Yeah. What do you mean by that?
Well, I just think women can be their own worst enemies, and the fact that there's so much negative stuff goes on with us. I think it's because of generational trauma and learned behaviours and it being competitive and not enough for everyone and poverty mentality for thousands of years, hundreds of years, so long that this has been happening to women, and it's traumatic and it's learned behaviours, and there's so much stuff going on. And she really, Coralie, went for it.
And Demi Moore,
I know,
and lead role, and that
self-hatred, and that's and the way we punish ourselves, and it was so great. So anyway, I think I'd really like to talk to Coralie.
There you go.
Got a lot of questions.
We'll see if we can't sort that out for you.
That'd be lovely. Thank you, Bryce.
In the meantime, Daina Reid, thank you very much for joining the call sheet.
It's my pleasure.